Okay, first of all, thank you so much for having me here. I would today like to speak about the importance of writing women-centric stories. Well, whenever I tell someone that I write about women and issues related to them, I often get a, oh, the boring feminist stuff look in their face, followed with a, why do you do that? Question in their eyes. So people are actually not interested to read these stories, to hear about these stories. And the question is why? The fact that people would rather see a woman bare her physical body than bare her soul through a writing makes us go further into this discussion that why are these stories not wanted? And because nobody wants to listen to these stories, it becomes really critical to tell them. The fact that we do not have many Indian movies which have strong female characters, and we have fewer female actors who would want to do these movies further strengthens my claim that we as a society want to not listen to these stories. So probably most of you here are thinking, why? Why does the world does not want to know the joys and sorrows of being a woman? Well, first of all, probably because everybody loves to live in a fantasy, the fantasy where we see woman as a goddess and worship her, and nobody would like to actually see a woman who is not a goddess sitting on a high pedestal of morals and ideals, but is a regular, simple human being who is marginalized, harassed, victimized, and sometimes killed. This revelation actually brings out our flaws as a society. This brings out the dirt which is present in our society, but which we conveniently brush under the carpet, because it makes us feel uneasy. It makes us unsettled to know that women are not goddesses. Writing wants to break this perception. Through my writings, I would like to break the perception that everything is okay, when it is not. It is not okay. Everything is not rosy in the world. Well, when I was growing up and when I hit puberty size, one of my senior teachers called me with other girls to her room, where she very dramatically asked us that what would happen if a thorn was to fall upon a leaf. We said, of course, the leaf would get harmed, it would get damaged. She further asked us, now what would happen if a leaf would fall upon a thorn? We, in a very flat tone, answered the obvious question that again, it would be the leaf which would get damaged. So you see, she exclaimed, girls are like leaves and boys are like thorns. So no matter what, who does what to whom, it is the girls who will always get harmed and damaged. I sincerely hope they are no more teaching this to young girls. But what she did that day was a very, very dangerous thing. She planted in our young and impressionable minds a seed of culture of silence. She forever conditioned us to believe that it was our fault, our mistake, because we let things happen to us. And because we were letting things happen to us, it was almost shameless to talk about it. So it is interconnected. Because it's our responsibility, we should not speak about it. Why does the world does not want its women to speak up? Why is speaking up considered such a taboo? Probably because everybody loves a victim. You know, it's powerful to rescue, surrender, help, pity a woman who has suffered a tragedy. But when a woman who suffers a tragedy gets up, hits back on her own, it takes away the power from someone to be a hero. We would rather want a woman to cry and continue to wait for someone for help rather than stand up, because it is discomforting. Again, it's unsettling. So as I said, people are so bound to love victims. And secondly, this silence, this culture of silence is also because a woman's silence is often considered an honor for the family. So women are told to hush up, to quieten down, because in their silence lies the honor of their families. And the mechanism of crime against women works so well. The perpetrator of crime against women knows very well that he will never be questioned, he will never be accounted for his actions, and he can continue victimizing one woman after another, because if ever the humiliation comes up, it will come not for him, but for the victim. It is because of this that we still have cases of eve teasing in broad daylight. We have men exposing themselves publicly because the perpetrator is never told to cover up or behave himself, but the victim is told to look away. Now, writing wants to shift this guilt from the victim to the perpetrator, rightly where it belongs. We need more stories. We need more where this harassment, this crime, this violence is so much spoken about, is so much comes in the public eye, that it becomes no more a matter of shame to have been harassed. So if I have been harassed, it should not be a matter of shame for me, but for the one who does that. Well, and as I was growing up, I was a very inquisitive child. I often used to trouble my mother with intriguing questions about why she did certain things, the old rituals, certain beliefs, and most often, she would just tell me, this is the way it is. Now, this is the way it is attitude has been passed on from one generation to another, and it never has any logical explanation. And women like my mother and other women like her who have passed on this attitude have never had the courage to question, to stand up and say no, or to say why. Well, religion is a very important tool in getting people to do something which they otherwise will not do. You tell someone that their God does not want them to eat, or the God does not want them to breathe, they will, without a doubt, give up eating and drinking and breathing. Instead of wondering why would such a loving God want such a thing. And it is because of religion being used as a tool. We see the cases of female genital mutilation happening in certain areas of the world, where young girls are made to go through a very horrible and painful rite of passage. These old practices have been invented most of the times to keep women in their places. And what is that place? A very secondary and inferior one. So what writing does is actually to question without fear certain practices and to try to understand why are we doing things just because we've been told to do it. So writing actually ensures that this age-old game of passing the buck stops. Well, I recently wrote a story on marital rape, a very taboo issue again, but interestingly, I had lots of women write back to me where they sympathized with the central character, and in their sympathies I could see that they had gone through a sort of catharsis. While reading the story of the central protagonist, they themselves could relate to her. So what happens when you write about stories? You let other women know that there are people who are suffering similarly as they are. Because women have been conditioned to keep quiet, to not share, it leads them to suffer in silence and isolation. And because they suffer in isolation, they never have a reference point wherein they can compare their situation and understand their problems better. So this whole patriarchal agenda of keeping a woman quiet so that she doesn't speak, and because she doesn't speak, the crime just goes on like a vicious cycle, has to be broken by hitting it where it hurts, by questioning that why are we still doing things that we are doing. Again, because writing is one way where a woman can actually question without coming totally in the public eye, and she can separate herself. You know, when I write, I am seen as first as a writer, then a woman, and it really distances me from my personal agendas, and I'm much able to write stories that affect larger people. So writing actually does not only empower the reader, but it also empowers the writer. And therefore, it is important to write women-oriented stories because now the silence has become deafening. It's a deafening silence we need to break. Thank you.